welcome back. We're looking at the renewed hope budget, and Mr. Joshua, you talked about the oil industry, and the oil industry is projected to produce 777 dollars per barrel. And it's projected to produce at least 13 million barrels. I can't quite pick the number. Okay, 1.7 billion barrels per day.
Yes.
How realistic is that, looking at the Dangote refinery?
Dangote refinery here is the production value chain. When we are looking at the extraction of crude oil from the soil, and that's what we are considering in that 1.7 million barrels per day. It's realistic. We can achieve it. All we need to do is to increase the oil field, that's oil exploration field and extraction field, drilling fields. So those are the things we need to increase and improve on, and which I believe that the government is doing. Recently, the presidency is looking at selling more oil licenses. Aside from the litigation issues we have on some oil fields and the crude oil theft issue, I believe that we should be doing very close to that, to our quota of 2.1 million barrels of oil of crude oil per day. So it's realistic. And when we look at the quantity produced and the price, we know that we are prepared for fluctuation. Budget is a budget and is stagnant for a whole year, except something supplementary is presented to override it. It's stagnant and constant for that period of time. And if that is that, we use a figure that is constant over that period. So that production figure is a little constant. It may be higher and it may be lower. I believe that it will be higher because there are a lot of production fields that have been opened up, and we still have the price per barrel. The price per barrel is kept at $77.96. That's still a little below what is being sold at the international market. And looking at the international politics, it's very likely that we still experience a higher price, higher than that price, a figure higher than that price, which I believe that is premised on the Ukraine-Russian war, premised on Hamas-Israeli war, and many other things. Even the threats of war within the Korean Peninsula and within the China-Taiwan axis is enough to cause an upset within the oil price. That as it may, whatever gains we make, whether as a nation or whether as federal government, will reside within the excess crude oil account, which can be used for another expenses, which can be presented for through another budget. So when we're looking at Dangote refinery stands to gain here by having its own quota. Since we know that this is our production quota, this may look like the international production quota. We may find a way of covering the local quota. It's not only Dangote refinery that is coming on board. We still have many other refineries which may be modular or the standard refinery, which are coming on board. We should look at providing their quota before they came on stream, before they came on ground. NNPC has promised them a quota of crude oil. So NNPC is expected to fulfill that quota. If they don't fulfill that quota, the investment is as useless as anything. So we need to fulfill the quota of our local demand for crude. I mean the local refinery. Then make sure that they are fairly sold to this local refinery. Maybe that is where the $77.96 will come from. And don't forget, when making some demands for loan, it's not open to many of us whether a part of it has been pledged as collateral for the loan. That when you produce, you give me certain portion of this crude oil immediately. So when you produce 100%, you give me 30% of your crude as my security for loan. Whatever comes from it will be in settlement of that loan. So we are not open to this kind of agreement. So I'm not bringing it to table. But there are a lot of indices to consider when you are considering the production rates, which might have incorporated that that lane for loan. So we should consider that equally.
Okay, let's talk about the debt servicing. The debt servicing projected is 8.25 trillion naira. That's 45% of the total revenue of the country. What's your take on that?
We don't have much control on the loan aspect of the budget. As much as the National Assembly has approved it, the bilateral, multilateral organizations have provided it, government has collected it, we have little or no control over it, because many previous governments have collected this loan, spent it on whatever they budgeted it for, and we have to pay. The obligation is on us. So when approving loans, we appeal to our National Assembly to look critically into what these loans were meant for and how we are going to refund the loan. 45% of our revenue is not a joke, because we are left with 65% to cater for whatever expenses we have, and we are still going for more. And quite unfortunate, we have a lot of loans which are not captured under this budget. When I say are not captured, I mean those loans that we have obligations to pay, which are domiciled within many other agencies, which are not budgeted for as of today. The obligations are there, but are not budgeted for as of today. So plus or minus, we are going to pay, whether we like it or not. So loans to revenue ratio is there. We have no control over it. It's gone, and we have little decision, except we are going to appeal for debt forgiveness or debt cancellations or debt re-engineering.
You know, the debt forgiveness you stated, the Nigerian government has already been announcing we don't have money, so probably that's the way we would go.
Yeah, that's the way we go, but they are waiting for us to. You have to justify that.
Okay, Mr. Joshua, the World Bank is refusing to give Nigerian government any further loans because we're owing a lot and we're yet to pay and everything. Plus, we're going domestic to get the debt. So looking at the current situation with the Israeli-Hamas war and the Ukraine-Russian war, how is that going to be on the economy, looking at the projections?
Well, when you grow appetite for loan, creditors will be worried. There is no way your creditors will not be worried, because your ability to pay will be a concern to them. I believe that our ability to pay has been a concern to the World Bank, and I know that maybe one or few conditions has been given unto us which we could not meet. I'm not privy to that, but I know that IMF condition, World Bank IMF loan, World Bank loan, they come with their own condition. It may be considered not favorable to the citizenry, so the loan cannot pull through. But when we look at the war, we know that the war will always throw up economics issue, which has to do with world economy, and the world economy at large it has to do with inflation, the exchange rate, and it has to do with driver minerals price. Driver minerals are the oil and gas, the lithium, the iron. So those are the driver minerals. When you consider the prices of driver minerals, it will go up. And we know that Ukraine is the world's largest producer of rice. So there will be pressure on our rice, either exportation through the borders or demands from across the borders. So we're expecting that this will take its toll on Nigeria. What we are looking at is a self-sustaining nation, and we can diversify from now.
Okay, the budget projected 9.18 trillion naira deficit, lower than the last year's 13.78 trillion naira. What do you think of that?
Well, we can reduce our targets. We should be growing, and all indices points to the fact that Nigeria is a growing nation. Both the GDP, the volume of trade, the international perspective about the country. We know that Nigeria is a growing nation, so we can't do anything less than that. And if we don't do an ambitious budget, we won't be able to drive the economy to an ambitious point. What I mean is that if our budget is robust enough to provide infrastructure, to provide enabling environment, to provide funds for the nation, because the funds are, government spendings are necessary to fund the private sector, because there is a kind of interrelationship. So if we don't provide this, we won't be able to drive the infrastructure that will shoulder the weight of the economy. So we need to do that. We need to spend our way out of the current situation and increase the purchasing power of Nigeria. So I commend the current regime for this budget, and we are looking at achievements. One other thing that I commend this government for is the PPP arrangement, which they want to look into, and that is good enough. And the privatization program, which have been looked into. Ordinarily, I don't like privatization, because if you privatize this year, are you going to privatize next year? So we need to look at sustainable income, not just one-off income. And that, as it may, we've gotten this one-off income. We should be looking at privatizing right and privatizing well, and not giving public companies to private individuals who will not make good use of it. A typical example of well-utilized private company is the LNNG, which is remitting good in terms of dividend and in terms of tax to the Nigerian government.
You mentioned the privatization. So the deficit is being financed by new borrowings. It's been financed by 7.8 trillion naira. That's the new borrowing, and 298 billion naira, that's privatization proceeds, and 1.05 trillion from multilateral and bilateral loans secured. What do you think of that?
Well, that's the finance mix. The finance mix is what we have on ground. When the Federal Inland Revenue ends its tax for the government, it's been divided into three. We're referring to the portion of the federal government, the portion that goes to the federal government of these taxes, and we are referring to the customs, the revenue generated, excise and import and excise duty generated by the customs. The revenue is good. The debt mix is good, and the PPP is good, while the privatization is equally good. The mix should have been to the tune of what is obtainable. You cannot overstretch the PPP arrangements. If you overstretch the PPP arrangements, if the privates are not ready to shoulder the weight of the project being thrown at them, it becomes a flop. So why budgeting higher than normal obtainables? Then we have the debt. Debt is to be financed by the multilateral and bilateral community organizations. This must have been well thought of, and we know that after approval, we approach this organization. Giving us time, I believe that we should be able to meet up this time. And apart from that, selling of bonds, international bonds and local bonds may be considered in achieving this target. And if we can do this, I believe that Nigeria may be better off for it if all these are well utilized. The good news about it is that there is a focus on infrastructure, which is road. Not all capital, which is 30% of the budget, not all capital budgets translate to infrastructural budgets. You see capital budget being filtered into the normal spending and the infrastructural spending. So I want to look at the infrastructural components of each budget, of which infrastructural component of this budget consists of the road, which is one of the key aspects of this regime, and that's good enough. We believe that if the roads are good and we have a concrete road like the Minister of Works has promised, we believe that it will be long lasting and we won't continue to spend much on the roads. One of those,
Mr. Joshua, sorry for cutting you off. What are the potential challenges you foresee in the implementation of the present budget? Because of looking at the situation in the country, the world economy, and the wars going on, how realistic is the budget, and what are the challenges that the budget might face?
Well, the budget is realistic. What the challenges faced by any Nigerian budget is cash backing. Cash backing. We are expecting that there should be cash backing, and we are expecting that the review of Procurement Act will come on board as soon as possible. But what I'm foreseeing is the human factor. We're looking at implementation factor. That's a critical point in any budget. Human factor is what I foresee as the limiting factor for this budget. Apart from that, sourcing fund may be quite challenging because we are not the only country looking for loans within the multilateral and bilateral community. We are not the only country, and we are not the only entity looking for that kind of loan. So we should work on that to get a good interest rate, and we should work on the Islamic funding of it. We see what Sukuk has done for us on the road project. Islamic funding is really expected, and it's really expected to pull the weight of our infrastructure.
Mr. Joshua, we're out of time. We're supposed to do the